I felt so loved by my community during that time. And I really do feel like you sometimes get what you need. And I got a lot during that time. And that's the beauty of, I think, the human experience is when somebody is down, people come and bring them up, and you hope that you can be that for them in the future.
Welcome to the PM Podcast, brought to you by Evertrue, the show that takes you inside the lives of thought leaders, innovators, and changemakers in fundraising, philanthropy, and civil society. I'm your host, Jay Frost. My guest today is Stephanie Willis, philanthropy strategist, fundraising data and research expert, consultant, and author of The Art and Science Approach to Fundraising Data and Research. Stephanie has spent nearly 15 years helping nonprofit organizations strengthen their fundraising through better data, research, strategy, and donor engagement. Today, she's a consultant with Creative Fundraising Advisors, where she advises organizations on data audits, database strategy, prospect development, and data integrity. She also serves on the board of Apra and as president of the Apra Foundation. In this episode, we trace Stephanie's path and the experiences that shaped how she thinks about work, resilience, and community, from the loss of her mother and the tornado that struck her town to questions about AI, data, and the future of fundraising and philanthropy, beginning with how she makes her workplace a happy place.
Yeah, I wanted, this is the first office of my own and with these walls since the beginning of my career. And so it had to be green, it had to be comfy, had to feel like me, and I love it.
Since the beginning of your career.
Yes.
So, okay, first of all, green. Why green?
This is my favorite color. It's the Sherwin-Williams paint, and it's called Relaxed, and it's just my favorite color of green. Yes.
Relaxing is a part of your thing. You talk about that on LinkedIn.
I do. A lot. Yes. And not a lot of, I feel like LinkedIn has evolved into, it is only professional, into a little bit more into personal. So I like to dabble around with different things, but I'm not shy about posting a vacation or tips about relaxing because, even writing the book Journey helped me understand I need better boundaries with it, especially working from home. So I'm a huge proponent. You can't see it, but there's a picture of a sloth that I haven't hung up, and it's over there. It's kind of life goals, which would surprise a lot of people because I'm a very hardworking achiever mindset. And a lot of people don't realize how much I chill out outside of work.
What's the biggest way that you chill on a regular basis? Not when you go off on a big journey like to Iceland, which I'd love to ask you about, but when you just are trying to live day to day beyond having a green room, what brings you to a happy place?
Yeah, I rotate between hobbies. So reading is probably the core one. I love reading, and depending on how intense my work is, depends on what genre. So I'm usually into, it has to be quick and entertaining these days. Video games. My current husband got me so into video games that I play games for children. That's about I can handle. And then I love reformer Pilates. So I'm a big Pilates and just breathing and just clearing my mind. So those are my happy places. And then of course, videos and shows. I feel like they are my children sometimes. I love TV, cinema, everything.
Yeah. Are you one of those folks who goes and binges when you give yourself time to do it? Or?
I say I like to relax, but I'm not a very good binger. Usually I have to break it up with some productivity. I give myself maybe one or two, and then it's let's go move. We call it releasing the blood clots, my husband and I, because we don't want to just sit and we get stiff and we're getting older. And so I'm not a big binger. In a stretch, in a day, yes.
All right. So you made another reference to the happy place when you were talking a few minutes ago, and you said that this has been your office since the beginning of your career. How many years are we talking about you forming your own career journey, but also doing it within your own space? That's kind of unusual to kind of own that agency from the beginning.
Yeah. So when I was 22, I was working on my master's in library science. I had graduated and I took a job at a college in Northwest Indiana, and I was made the director of housing and residence life. I'm not sure why a 22-year-old should be doing that, but I was. And I had my own office with a door and a couch because I needed to have closed door meetings. And then I went, and now I'm 41. And so I went from that to cubicles, to open concept, to cubicles, to shared office, to a rental house that didn't have an office. And so this is my first true office, minus I think one that I shared with my dogs with my ex-husband at some point. But this is my true Stephanie space, the room I always wanted growing up.
Yeah, yeah. But you have been through the cubicle life.
Oh, yes. Yes. I've been through cubicle life, the open concept where there's no cubicles because those are too much. There was one company I worked for that was, we don't want any walls of any kind. We are all here. We're chatting. We're collaborating. And wow, that's not for everybody.
Now, you started with that education in library science.
Mm-hmm.
Although there may have been more before that. So maybe I should first ask you, why library science? And then how did that eventually lead you to that work in fundraising research, which is how I guess we've met?
I never thought, honestly, I think a lot about this, especially, lately I've been reflecting on just where my career has taken me, but I grew up in Lutheran grade school, high school, and college. And in the atmosphere I was in, it was, you're going to be a teacher. For some reason, the cohort or grades I was in, it was women become teachers, men become pastors. Well, when I was 16, my first job when I was in high school was at a library. And so the library staff there, they were elderly women. They were mostly retired, but a couple of them had been to get their library science degrees. And so I went to college and I had a library job. It was one of the coveted jobs at the college and went there. And again, I had people, as I was realizing education wasn't my passion. I am a firm believer. I don't want to do anything that I'm not passionate about. And so at their recommendation, I pivoted, graduated with my education degree, and then went right into library science. While I was working on that, residence life paid the bills for 5 years. And then I fell into prospect research in 2013. And now it's 13 years later and my forever career, I like to say.
This phrase, falling into it, is something I've heard and I think I've used.
Mm-hmm.
What does that really mean to you? Because you're a person who makes choices for herself. The color of that room, when you give yourself time, all the things. So I can't imagine that you sort of just stumbled and found yourself in that office.
Correct. And it's so interesting. I used that phrase in a presentation I gave at the Apra PD conference last year. And I said, how many of you have heard the phrase, did you fall into this? So I'm teaching the next generation. But to your point, at the time when I was in residence life, knowing library jobs were hard to come by, and I lived in a small town in Northwest Indiana where I basically had to drive 45 minutes to an hour to get a job, basically. And so I saw one at a university that was about an hour north of me, Valparaiso University, and they had a job that I saw, wow, I have those transferable skills. I have the research, the database experience from library school. And so I figured I'll just learn about advancement. I'm not really sure what it is. I'm sure fundraising, I can figure it out. And so that person was, and I came in and I said, I'd like the salary. She said, no. I said, I really do, just with the commuting. And so I did enough and I got that. And so falling in is basically a betting on my skill set, but not even realizing, I don't know. I didn't think it would be a forever job. I wanted to get out of residence life and into something that had to do with all of the degree I was just fresh off of too.
When I think about residence life, I imagine that it's obviously so people-centered because you're taking care of the residents, but that's a very social activity in a certain sense. I mean, highly social. You have to be in charge of those kids. You're in loco parentis. I mean, literally.
Yes.
So now the world that people think of as research traditionally or all prospect development has been seen as more isolated.
Mm-hmm.
So how was that switch for you? Was that more comfortable, or was that a big change?
It was comfortable because I feel like my true self is that introvert. I need to charge. And so in the residence life days, I could fake it very well. I was younger. I had a lot of different exciting things that kind of boosted me. But also when I got to the job, and it was more, I was just doing research profiles and then learning obviously everything there is. But I brought residence life with me. In the office, I created a fund committee. I volunteered to decorate bulletin boards. So I still brought that residence life over. And luckily, they were good spirits about it, because now I'm thinking if somebody would have come in when I did that, I don't know how I'd embrace it. But they did. And so I like to bring that. But also it was this is just, I can breathe a little bit easier. The biggest thing I ditched was I would sleep with my phone under my pillow, because there would be emergencies at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday.
What?
And so
Wait, why? What kind of emergencies?
in residence life, oh my gosh, it would be somebody got too drunk, somebody went to the hospital, somebody went to jail, somebody they were sick with something. And so the security guards would always call me because I was the director.
Right.
And it was, I didn't feel like I could be away from that job because something would always happen. So it was really stressful. And so I ditched that when I switched jobs too.
Yeah, no more phone under the pillow.
No. Well, it's still my worst habit. It ends up near my pillow more frequently than not. It is a habit that I have constantly tried to break.
But is that for you, or is that for work? In other words, because now you're your own boss, so are you just trying to be responsive to all those people who need you, want you, and are asking too much of you? Or do you just like to be in touch with the world? Outbound?
I think it's the first one. You know, I don't have kids, but I do feel like my mothering tendencies come out within other people. Hence the residence life. I had 30 RAs who I got to mother basically, and the students. And I watched my mom do something similar where she was just on for everybody. So that's a very good question back to me. Why do I still do it? It's probably the first one of, I want to feel available if anybody needs me. And I can't think of in maybe 15 years I've ever gotten a call past 11 at night. I mean, I don't get phone calls a lot, but such an interesting, it must be that I want to be available for others mentality.
Right. Well, even the method of communication has been changing over time. You just talked about those calls at 2 a.m. And I imagine that even in the world of residence life, a lot of those things are coming in maybe at 2 a.m, but they're coming in the form of a text.
Yes. Yep. That was my first BlackBerry. I was excited. I was like, oh my gosh, I have a BlackBerry. I'm so important, professional. Right. And I wish I didn't have it. I don't.
Okay. So for listeners who have no idea what you mean by BlackBerry and think it's a fruit, what are you talking about?
Talking about an old school phone that came out that had email and text message on it. God forbid. And right. I had always had a phone that you could, I still remember the phone where I couldn't text without racking up a huge bill. And my parents would say, oh my gosh, you have to stop texting. Yes. So I'm aging myself in the BlackBerry was kind of the first email text computer-like phone that I had. And this would have been in the 2000s, late 2000s.
Right, right. With a full keyboard, actually, for your phone.
Yes, right. Yes.
Actual little buttons. So that was, and that may not seem relevant to a conversation about career, but really the choices that we make and the way we communicate with one another, they're really material, I'm sure, to the work that you've done all along and certainly that you do now. Not just the tools we use, but how we use them. So anyway, you were residence life. You had that background in librarianship. Then moved into development, and you described some of the differences there, but you didn't just stay in one place in development. So it was universities, United Way, and now consulting. Is that those transitions, were they were they opportunistic in the positive sense? Were they, you saw an opportunity, went out and went for it? Or were you pursuing a kind of a vision, or was one developing?
That's a great question. I always, from when I was young, wanted to have a career. I saw my parents both have careers in their own sense. And so when I was in my 20s, it was, I'm going to look for the jobs that fulfill me, that I was looking for my forever job in my young 20s, not realizing that I did bounce around. And so in the initial, after the first job where I was at in prospect research, my ex-husband moved us to Indianapolis. So we were in Northwest Indiana. We moved to Indianapolis, where I lived for quite a while, and needed a job and fell into library. But then what I think, if I look back on that, is I have non-negotiables for a job. And one is I don't want to be bored. I want to feel, and second is I want to feel like I'm doing good work. And so those job changes honestly led to, I don't feel like I'm giving my full potential, not trying to move up any ladder, just trying to figure out, is something meeting all my non-negotiables for this time? And so I would go to a job and I'd have great experience, and then something would be missing from it. And so then I switched thinking that will give me, and it didn't. It gave me a lot of great experience that I now use. And then when I joined the consulting firm in 2021, I thought, yes, this is it, what I've been searching for. I don't know if it will be forever, but I certainly have no plans for that. And so it was an intentional searching for my non-negotiables.
How did you develop those non-negotiables? Was that something you just had your whole life, or was that something you developed in relation to different job situations that where, you had to fight for those things?
I built those based on the watching of people ahead of me do things. So my mom, for example, my mom was always very conscious that she didn't have a college degree, and she worked so hard. And so she had different jobs, and I saw her hard work ethic. And then in high school, she wanted to bring more income in for our family. And so she got a second job. And so her second job was at a gym, and she worked her way up to become a general manager of, it's actually Lifetime Fitness, a chain of gyms around. And so I watched her put too much into work and not have non-negotiables, where it impacted her health, it impacted her life. It didn't give her what she wanted. I feel like she was always seeking something that once she got it, she couldn't. And so somehow, by either osmosis or the constant, I don't want to be like that streak in somebody watching their mom, I wanted for myself, I don't want what I call golden handcuffs, meaning that part of me and who I need is going to be compromised by money, or, she put in 80, 90-hour weeks. And so that's where my non-negotiables came from. My non-negotiables started from there, and then it evolved as I learned things like sometimes the culture at a place and benefits are on the slate, are what is a non-negotiable. I think, of some people when I worked at United Way, some of their non-negotiables were, I needed flexible sick time because I had kids. That wasn't me, but I think that it's just learning from other people's experiences, especially directly in my mom's experience, that came out of.
How was that for you as a kid growing up, watching your mom work all those hours?
It was tough. I had a pretty rocky growing up. My parents divorced when I was about 7, and they both went on to get remarried. I inherited 6 step siblings, both sides.
Oh my.
And so my life kind of shifted when I was very young, and I suddenly post-divorce became very independent, very adult. I wanted to work at basically the age of 12. I became a babysitter, all that, because it was hard. She was gone a lot. She did make herself accessible. I called her a lot at work to check in, but I basically, not even realizing it, had a model of somebody who I honestly, Stephanie, don't know if I work as hard as I can, because I saw somebody like that work and sacrifice and give that. And what a blessing she did. She wanted to provide for our family. But also, yeah, it was really difficult. And I feel like that's where a lot of time I'm independent and focused because I didn't have much help or support kind of growing up.
Yeah. But this sense of independence that you developed it sounds like it's attributable to the experience, but and of course, not wanting to replicate what you saw as the difficulty, but also it sounds like you have a lot of respect for what she went through to support you all and your siblings, but you're talking in the past tense.
Sure.
Do you still have your mom?
She passed away. She passed away in 2020. She had a lifelong battle with an eating disorder, and it caught up to her. When I started my first job actually at Valparaiso, she was so sick she had to have a multivisceral transplant. So her entire system down there, she had to be transplanted because she was so sick. That got her a few more years. But unfortunately, she passed away at the start of the pandemic, before we even knew it was the pandemic. It was probably week 2, and it wasn't even COVID. She had pneumonia, her health issues caught up. And so that was really difficult because it's, what is this thing we're going through? And she had near-death scares for years. I mean, it was we couldn't believe that she lasted as long as she did with how sick she was. And so it was really tough. And I give so much credit to the nurses at the time because we could not, she was in Detroit. I was down in Indianapolis. We couldn't see her. We couldn't go to the hospital. It was COVID. And they let us FaceTime. It was too gone. We couldn't talk to her. But if we wanted, they said, talk to her. She can hear you. She had been in a coma. And so she passed away. And that was a really, really hard time. 2020 was the worst with the pandemic, with my mom. It was a really, really hard year.
Where were you professionally at that time?
I was at Marian University down in Indianapolis. I had come there and thought I was going to be starting a prospect research shop. It ended up being a database administrator, which again, at the time it's, oh, I can't believe I'm doing that. I use so many of those skills now in my consulting. So it's great. But I was really fortunate because we could work remote. We weren't laid off. The college kept going.
Yeah.
I still kept it. And I actually started some big things for Apra Indiana, where I did a webinar. And it was like 5 ways to stay relevant in the pandemic, something like that. I don't remember the name. And over 500 people came. And so I kind of led the charge on, we can still make ourselves valuable in this time, even though everything's paused with fundraising, et cetera. And so I think I did that honestly because I was coping. I needed something to do, to put my mind on, to compartmentalize, because you couldn't go anywhere or do anything, and work was kind of it. And so that's really where I leaned into.
Yeah, it must have been a benefit that you could work remotely, but then on the other hand, it was a very isolating time. If you were isolated from your mom, who was going through that at the very beginning, and then from colleagues, and I don't know about other friends, I assume from friends and family, that must have been very difficult, but you found some solace in working, I guess, for others.
Yes. And I was with my ex-husband and dogs. And so I had kind of friends in the bubble who would come over. But when my mom passed, my coworkers organized meals to come to us. I got gifts from people. I felt so loved by my community during that time. And I really do feel like you sometimes get what you need. And I got a lot during that time. And that's the beauty of, I think, the human experience is when somebody is down, people come and bring them up, and you hope that you can be that for them in the future. And I try to do that when somebody's going through something. I just saw somebody at the Apra PD conference last week, and he had lost his home in a fire a few years ago. And I asked, how are you? And he said, I can't believe you remember. I said, of course I remember. I mean, it's so terrible when we have all of these things that we experience. We want to be there for each other.
Um, and that's something that I bet you understand quite a bit. It wasn't long ago that you posted about a tornado that hit your
Yes.
town.
Yes. I mean, that's the start of this year was also, is this a 2020 relive? But I started the year, I had just been promoted. I was traveling. think I'd been on 6 trips in a month to different states. And so I'm home one Friday afternoon, and my husband calls and says, "Are you in the basement?" And I said, "Why would I be in the basement? It's Friday afternoon." He said, "I need you to get there now." So I did. 2 minutes later, he gets home. And then after that, what now we know, but a tornado went through, and it went right through town. If he had been in his office building, the whole roof was demolished. He wasn't. He was safe at home, but we lost, of all things to lose, this is fine. We lost half our vinyl fence. We're on half an acre. And I heard that train sound that they talk about come through. And afterwards, seeing our town like coming outside, and all the neighbors were outside talking, and there were so many people who lost their homes, and it was so scary, but I had no time to process what was happening because it was so fast. And the sirens didn't go off. I didn't get a phone alert. It was just afterwards. It's like, I cannot believe what happened. And so it was wild. And then the next week we put our sweet girl dog down, and I left on a work trip. It was such a, gosh, I was feeling my feels. And yes, sometimes when I go through that, I'll go on LinkedIn or social media and post something because I'm processing through, but also I think I'm looking for that, my community, really. I mean, why do we network? I'm fresh off presenting about a networking topic last week, and I said to the audience, sharing is networking, honestly. And so I tend to be vulnerable on LinkedIn because I want people to see the authentic me and my experiences, but also I need love and support. That's why I have a community.
Right. And in fact, a lot of the things that you talk about professionally are including things like, data cleanliness, using data properly, all these things which are could be interpreted as highly technical, but they're essential to our work and development. And now, of course, you have the book, The Art and Science Approach to Fundraising Data and Research.
Yes.
But when I hear those things, when I think about those things, the first thought is not networking. And in fact, much of the world of prospect development, that's the Apra PD reference that you're making, is often in a silo and not networking with other parts of the office. This isn't always true, and it has developed with time, but there has been that element. So you've talked a little bit about why networking is important to you. Can you talk about why you think it may be important, if you think it is, to the whole field? And by the whole field, you define that however you want.
Yep. No, definitely. I mean, I think that consulting has really given me an angle on that because I'll come into a client engagement and it's data and research. That's what I consult on. And I'm not just working with the administrators. I'm working with the fundraisers or the marketing team or all of that. So going back, why it's important. First, it's debunking what networking is. I feel like that word is a trigger for some people. And so in my presentation that I give, and why I feel passionate about it too, is you have to know your why. There's different reasons for networking. And so when I think about our industry networking, there are some people who want to network to plant seeds to get jobs. There's some people who network to learn skills from each other. But I take the approach of networking is bringing your authentic self to a situation with the chance to just be open to human connection. And I think what I see in my work with clients, organizations, and even in my own life, you need people who have diverse skill set. And it's like when you walk in somebody else's shoes and experience it, I think that our industry, I would love to see more fluidity between if I hear behind the scenes and front facing, I try to knock those down. And it comes with, again, network, but in this sense, network, I mean connection. And I think a general understanding of each other is so important, because it's hard to do that, especially, if you have a vice president who his eyes roll up when you say the word database. Then I'm in there. I want to debunk, why did your eyes roll up? How can I change that, etc. And so I like to think of myself as kind of that connector to help debunk. Networking is not, you're in a rude speed dating. It is we are open to giving each other a good understanding. And a lot of that also, I've been for 16 years a certified Gallup strengths educator. So strengths finder, personalities, that opened my eyes to, we need everybody represented, and let's take advantage of everybody's skills to make something even better.
That going through that work with Gallup, and then I'm sure encouraging clients and even friends to go through that process. Mm-hmm. How have you found that to be helpful?
So I think what I love is when people have new understandings about each other. And also, I love that when people have a safe space. I feel like a lot of people can't be themselves or are scared to. And I understand that. I went through a time where I remember somebody told me when I was in that director of housing and residence life job, 22, over my head, I started crying. And she said, if you want anyone to take you seriously at work, you'll never cry. You will not show emotions. So for a long time, I did not. And then it was when I started turning it on, it was more people connect to each other when you have that openness. And so I love bringing that. And I think that I never force that on anybody, but I think the more people understand that it is, you have to pick your safe spaces, but there's just something so beautiful about being open to the newness and just sharing and connecting and getting help. And, that's the biggest thing, is so many people, me included, don't like to ask for help. And yet when you have that networking connection, whatever you want to call it, it becomes easier to get help.
That personality profile that kind of lends itself naturally to expressing our feelings and doing that with others. Mm-hmm. It's not everybody, right?
No.
And I wonder if you find more of that in kind of our part of because I don't like these silos either, you can tell. But the people who are doing all the prospect development range of activity, mm-hmm. if they've either been recruited, kind of the self-fulfilling prophecy, to be mm-hmm. people who don't necessarily express, but they put their nose to the grindstone, mm-hmm. if they're or if they have been encouraged once they're there. It's just like you were, mm-hmm. don't cry at the office. If mm-hmm. if that happened because the people who preceded them said that's the way you're supposed to work. Mm-hmm. If there are any factors that have caused people who deal with information, data, and that kind of thought process to be more reticent about coming forward and saying, these are my non-negotiables, like you said earlier, right. Or this is my vision for the entire office or for the organization. This is how we can communicate with donors. Mm-hmm. Where are we on those fronts in our part of the operation?
Yes, I think in this, I'll say the prospect development data kind of world, I think that a lot of times I feel like the people who I have supported in consulting don't feel like they have a voice, or they've tried to raise their voice and they don't have it. And I think that that's a mix of a lot of different things. Managers who might not be equipped. There might be I tried it and I failed, but I think that a lot of times what I have seen, this is my perspective, and is especially the Apra community or ASB or et cetera, we have a lot of sessions on going to others, going and making sure they're trained, et cetera. And not a lot of the other way around. Let me understand you, let me walk in that. And so I think that it is really tough. And I think that a lot of times also prospect researchers, database administrators, et cetera, are so overworked that they can't even begin to think about their non-negotiables, et cetera. It's just coming and slogging it out because the nonprofit landscape is so tough these days that there might not even be time and energy to tackle it. A lot of times, honestly, when I have my weekly consulting calls, they said, wow, Stephanie, I never get to talk about these things because there's no time. And so I like giving that safe space and also not pushing it if it's there. But I think we still have a ways to go. And then also balancing the fact that it is work and home. They don't have to be the same, but I hate when people don't feel like they can at least be themselves in whatever and have a voice of some kind.
Okay, so now I just have to push back a little bit because there are going to be people
Hey.
who listen to this and they say,
Yes.
well, wait a minute,
Yes.
AI is making it so we don't have to do half this stuff anymore. There's no more coding. It's all being done by our machines.
Sure.
And the brilliant, people out on the West Coast. And so what about with this, with research, the research function itself? Can't we just push a button and find out everything we need to know? Yeah. So when you hear this, and then you balance that against what you're also hearing, which is people who are feeling the burden of all this work and all the speed that they're required to do it in. Mm-hmm. How do you balance those two things, or at least those two perceptions?
Yes, AI is something, it comes up at every conference. It comes up in my calls. I'll have a lot of people say what it is, but where I find that whole role is, yes, AI can make jobs easier, take tasks, but there's still that human element that I feel like gets missing. And I think also where I go to debunk that in AI is ethics. You need some human controlling the ethics behind the AI use. And I think that there is a long, long way to go. And then the other thing too, I just don't know if our profession is ready for all of the AI, because I think that it is still new to understand. You have people who are learning the skill sets and then learning the skill sets in AI. There's a lot of, I always say bad data AI just fails if you don't have solid data. And so I think that it's a balance. I think that AI can be very useful for certain tasks, but that human element, I don't think can be replaced anytime soon. I mean, I remember doing my master's thesis on, will digital libraries replace physical libraries? And I said, no, there's no way. And they have not. Have they changed in how they are structured and how they do work? Yes. And so I think about the same kind of thing. Hopefully AI will only strengthen, not replace fully, but I think it's just kind of that space race of what is coming out and can we keep up with it?
Well, it's also interesting because even though books haven't died, which was the thing that we used to hear, just like we used to hear in development, there's a profile button or all your fundraising will be virtual or digital or whatever the thing was that week. Just today, I think it was The Guardian had an article about these mass book purchases of older books, some of them relatively rare, and tracking them with a device to see where they went. And they found that they were going out to a facility for one of the big companies, I won't say which one, and that they were being cut up essentially to first scan them and then to destroy the physical copy. So if the physical copy ceases to exist and the data does exist out in the world of AI, and let's say people in research have no way of verifying, that does place an additional burden on us, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I think then that would be the chance to evolve. When I think about even going back to the pandemic, the rules were thrown out the window with fundraising and we managed and we came back. And so I think that if that happens, we have to understand, how do we evolve in this situation? How do we make ourselves relevant? How do we, I have been paying attention to wealth screens forever, and I deal a lot with it and have a lot of thoughts on it. And it's all evolution. And so I think that when we prepare that change is inevitable, then, we can start thinking about that. But I'll have to check that article out. Yeah.
Well, you said that you have a lot of thoughts about this whole issue about, let's put it this way, about vendor data, because it comes in lots of forms, varieties, and applications.
Yep.
So what are some of your big thoughts on that right now? It has evolved a lot since my old days in the field.
Mm-hmm. A lot of my work is helping clients. I'll rewind a second. A lot of my work is seeing where is the need that organizations are having. And lately in the past year or two, it has been, what database should I be in? What resource should I be, et cetera. And so I like to say that I am agnostic in this. Give me a solution and I can find somebody who uses it. Every system was created with a purpose. And so what I like to do is collect all of them on the market. I will have a demo with every single one, because each was created for a specific reason. And I like to find out why it was created, so that if a client comes in, an organization says, oh my gosh, that would be really great, I borrow my non-negotiables for a job and I talk about non-negotiables for systems. And so I am very open to all of the systems, because I work with clients who are all so different, but there's solutions out there. And so I've loved what I like to call the shiny toys that are coming on the market. I also know that there are certain consumers that are right for those products. And I also feel like lately, not all companies get attention, because flashy ones are popping up and then you don't know, is that? And so I really like to keep an eye on the atmosphere, because there are some really cool systems that have trending things. And I like to be that, let me help you navigate to which one. It's probably one of the favorite things that energizes me, because it combines all my teaching, library science, and field knowledge.
And is that the kind of work you're doing as a consultant a lot of the time?
Yep, a lot of the time. I spend a lot of my time in prospect research, profiles, prospect management, et cetera. But ever since my database administration days, they'll kind of pivot between. But a lot of my work right now is what database is right for me, how to optimize my current database, how to get other people in my organization to use it. And so I like to help. And so I have a lot of clients who will go through an RFP, will search, or they are implementing. I'll stay on to advise them. But I love databases and talking about them as well. And so again, I always kind of go over the area of greatest need, but the area of greatest need is this crisis of what system are we using these days?
So that, and as you just said, crisis is the word, because when people get to a crisis, then they're looking for a solution, and then they find you or some other solution.
Yes.
But for the many who are not in that crisis moment, or they don't realize they are, what can you tell folks why they should care? Why should they care about all of this, about data and people who are managing their data and all that, the ethics attendant with this, not just the technology, and also the cost? I mean, why should they really care?
Yep. So people listening can't see me smile, but this is one of my favorite things to tell anybody in fundraising and non-fundraising. Fundraising is philanthropy. Fundraising is raising money. And so if we were all out to raise money, great. But philanthropy is what we really should be thinking about. And so where I'm going with this is basically philanthropy is connecting people to the areas that they're passionate about, and those areas helping the greater scheme. So why should they care? I always tell people, think about 3 or 4 areas that you are passionate about or is doing good work in your community. Think about being in their database. Do you want your address incorrect? Do you want your name misspelled? Do you want, if your partner passes away, do you want that? We're all humans. And I think that systems, if we get people's informations or we are in them, we have a responsibility to protect that. But also the other thing too is, why should they care about the system, is just data drives good decisions as well. If there is suddenly a campaign that an organization is running because they can't afford the building property anymore, they're going to turn to their database. They're going to turn to their network of supporters. If you can't make sense, heads or tails of clean data in the system, or you send things out, it's going to hurt you. There was a very true story that there was a mailing that went out of an organization I worked, I won't say which one. It went to a donor and who was at the $1 million giving level. He got 7 pieces of the same mailed address to 3 houses, called us and said, how can I give you $1 million if you can't even figure out where I live? That has stuck with me because he's absolutely right. And so I see data systems more than just number. They're people, they're stories, they're your next door neighbor, they're your colleague sometimes. And so it's a very positive, optimistic, et cetera way of thinking it. But again, it's about the human connection. And so they're more than fundraising systems. They're powers of philanthropy. And I've seen philanthropy change lives. So I feel that's a lot of my book, honestly. I wrote a chapter about why philanthropy. It's something that I've always kind of had in me, but didn't really realize it until I came into this space, how much it just resonates with me.
And speaking of that, now, of course, you're chairing the Apra Foundation.
Yes.
So, and Apra hasn't always had a vigorous foundation, so it's nice to see you running that effort and trying to expand support for it. Yes. For people who really don't know what Apra is, it might be helpful to know both why you do this and why you think the foundation is important, what purpose it serves.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And to your point, the Apra Foundation has been around since 1998, and yet it's kind of has stumbled and grown, et cetera. And so Apra Foundation exists to give back to the community. And so the Apra Foundation sponsors awards. And so we just celebrated our award winners for the year at the conference, and also professional development grants. And so the Apra Foundation is so important to me because it is our demonstration of we are living what we are practicing, really. I mean, this is our industry. And so this past year when I knew it, it was also an honor to be the president because it's typically held by the Apra president. And so I've been on the foundation before and witnessed a human who has so much on their plate, let alone the foundation. And so when I stepped into the role, I wanted to bring some infrastructure to it. It typically changes hands each year, and I wanted to have a role description and to understand what does this look like, knowing that we're even trying to figure out who our audience is and what that looks like. But this year we launched a new giving platform. The old system was so hard to donate through, and so I didn't want any obstacles. And I know that Apra in particular has given me so much. And so I feel honored that I can give back. And the foundation is such a great way because, I get such moving responses from somebody who won that award saying, I wouldn't have been able to come to this conference, or I can't believe I was chosen. It's just such a cool way to recognize. We don't get a ton of recognition in life, in our work, in this field. Recognition is just very hard to come by. And so I'm so glad that I was able to be a part of that, to give back, but also it's also what I'm a firm believer of. It's not just about the money. It's not just fundraising. It's not just raising funds, advocacy, awareness, et cetera. And so for those listening, that is the same power as well. However, we do need funds to support the awards and grants, so it's a slippery slope sometimes. Well,
it's certainly a cause that that I'm supportive of. So
yes,
I'm glad to see you doing this work. It also means that you're in constant touch with your other, not just all the members of Apra and people throughout fundraising, the broader field across the country, but also specifically you're in touch with members of the board, past leaders, current leaders, and future leaders. Do you have a sense about where the profession either is going or needs to go next? I know you're not speaking for Apra in this case, you're speaking for you, but I'm sure you've given this some thought, especially as you finish the book and then you move forward in your own work. Where is all this heading?
I think that, It's a good question. It's a heavy question. What I think is needed in the next 5, 10 years is probably more dedicated education in this space. I see things like the Lilly School of Philanthropy producing fundraising skills. I think that I hope people continue to fall into this industry, et cetera. But I think in order to keep it alive, there needs to be some pipelines for this. And so I don't know if it's certification. I don't know if it's a dedicated school. That is honestly a little bit why I wrote my book. I did not have a book that I saw out there that talked about fundraising data, fundraising research, and fundraising skills. And so I think the other thing kind of going forward that I've been really paying attention to is we have got to focus more on relationships, because I think that organizations have gotten support from major donors, and that's always going to happen. But the lower and the middle and lower tier of donors is shrinking unless organizations can build relationships and keep in touch with them. However, the market is also very saturated. And so it all then comes back to, how do you build relationships with thousands of people? If you're a nonprofit org of 5 people, you need a solid database. You need a solid infrastructure. You need processes and procedures. You need to be able to stretch your talent. And so I wouldn't say I'm necessarily worried about the profession, but I think we have a huge responsibility to guide it into that, and also, again, fill our pipeline so that more people understand it's a really cool skill set transferable that you could drop in with a lot of different careers. But I hope that starts more blossoming in the years to come.
And what about for you?
For me, it's so interesting because I feel like I am going around trying to tell the basics. I feel like my approach is, I love teaching and I love giving what I've been given to. So in the coming years, I want to see myself help steward that next generation, how it looks. I didn't have a lot of mentors in my 20s and 30s. I tried to pick some, etc. But I think for me, I'm slowly becoming that for people of all ages, honestly, because I have been blessed with a career that has led me to a lot of experiences, etc. And so I hope that I'm always in, again, as I'm in the profession, I always hope that I can continue giving back and stewarding that, and honestly helping spread that message of philanthropy, because there are other days where it gets very hard and very draining, etc. I love where I'm at. I love consulting because, again, it's that perfect thing. And so it might be my forever job, but I also need to understand that there is no forever job, because we're always learning and growing. But I'm in such a great place in my life that I'm so excited to embrace kind of what's to come. And then, I had a roadmap for myself for a long time and none of it happened, and I ended up here. So if things want to keep happening that way, then who am I to say, no, I don't want that?
Yeah, I think Robert Frost has a line about way leads on to way. And when we started this conversation, you were talking about the happy place, and not just physically in that room with the green walls, but beyond that. You have a picture of Alaska behind you from a friend. Yeah. You were talking about your trip to Iceland.
Yes.
So first of all, tell me about Iceland. Why did you go there? And is that another part of this journey to your happy place?
Oh, that's a really great question. Yes. It was so interesting. I'll answer your question and tell a side story. I recently posted about a group called my Apra Fab 5. It was me and 4 other individuals who joined the board, and we're so different. And I realize our differences because I asked each one what they did for a milestone birthday. And I think that says a lot about them. So I had never shared this, and my happy place is nature. It is water, it is nature, it is that. And so, yes, why Iceland? So my husband and I moved to Michigan to intentionally be waters and lakes, etc. And so when we got married in 2024, he and I thought, where should we go? We're not very big beach sun people. And we said Alaska. And it was the most stunning place I've ever been. And so then we're thinking, we want to do another vacation. It's so important to take rest and relaxation. I'm not very good at that. And so we had friends who had been to Iceland and said, well, if you like Alaska, you're going to love Iceland. And when I'm on vacation, I do not like to do a lot of things. I like to sleep. I like to do my activities. I don't like to plan details, etc. So we did a cruise around Alaska, and it is one of the most beautiful places. The geography is so different. We saw this beautiful waterfall, the Godafoss waterfall, the water of the gods. We were on the bridge between continents where there's two tectonic plates that have separated from each other. And I think it just reminds me that we're here for a bigger reason, but I like to be very quiet in nature and calm because, again, I bring everything to work. And when I'm not doing that, I know I need to recharge, and nature is where I recharge. But I would highly recommend it's Iceland. It's so unique. The air quality is quite expensive given the location and where they are, but it was fantastic.
Well, that's it for this episode of the PM Podcast. You can learn more about Stephanie Willis and her new book at fundraisingartandscience.com. Our thanks to our sponsor, EverTrue, a philanthropy-first intelligence platform that helps fundraising teams turn data into action and build real donor relationships, working with nonprofits, healthcare organizations, and educational institutions across the country. You can learn more about EverTrue at evertrue.com. Our producer is Jack Frost, and our theme music is Moving Out, Moving In by Jay Taylor, courtesy of Epidemic Sound. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe and check out our sister shows, Frontlines of Social Good and How to Raise, all part of the Philanthropy Mastermind series. Until next time, I'm Jay Frost. Thanks for joining me.